All right, meteorologist Ryan Hanrahan here. I wanted to get back on the air and talk about this thunderstorm in New York State. I'm getting increasingly concerned about it, so I do want to give you a first alert. We don't have a warning here in Connecticut just yet for this storm, but this is about as impressive a thunderstorm as you'll see in New England and the Northeast, and there's a tornado warning just a few miles to the west of us, and I have a feeling, based on what I'm looking at, is that warning is going to get extended shortly into portions of Litchfield County. So here's the tornado warning from this thunderstorm. It looks like this storm is producing extremely large hail. We're looking at hail possibly the size of baseballs with this storm just to the west of Salisbury right now. And this little hook back here, if there was a tornado, this is where it would be. This is on the border of Dutchess County, New York, and Columbia County, New York, and you can see this is a very impressive storm. And notice this green shading to the south. I just want to point this out. This is what we call a hail spike, and it's actually a radar artifact. As the radar beam is going through this monster thunderstorm, it's actually hitting the ground, the radar beam, and then bouncing back up to the cloud and back to the radar site. So sometimes in the strongest of storms, you'll see a hail spike, and that's exactly what we have here in this thunderstorm. This is a supercell thunderstorm that's capable of producing a tornado, and I'm going to time out this storm for you. It's moving quickly, about 50 miles per hour. If there was a tornado, it would be right about here, and it is not far from northwestern Connecticut. So we're talking about Salisbury around 3:07 or so. So if you're in Salisbury, I would be watching this storm very carefully. If you have friends or family in Salisbury, you should give them a call and give them a heads up and say, hey, you've got something really bad coming in from the west, and this is going to continue to move to the east. And Canaan, we're talking about it moving into the town of North Canaan, the village of Canaan, around 3:14. Now, this storm is going to scrape the Massachusetts-Connecticut border here as it moves due east. So if we were to track this due east, it looks like the hail core, which is going to set up on the northern side of the storm, a lot of the hail is probably going to fall over southern Berkshire County, so places like Sheffield and Great Barrington. But if there's a tornado threat, it would be on the southern edge of this storm, which would be south of where the hail is. So basically, you've got the hail core up here. We have this very bright and vibrant yellows and oranges, and especially the pink and purple shading here. That's where you've got hail possibly to the size of baseballs coming down. And on the southern end, that's where, if there was a tornado, that's where it would be. Now, what I can do is I can show you the velocity mode here on live first alert Doppler radar, and a pretty concerning signal develops as we zoom in a little bit more. And so what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at winds that are blowing away and toward the radar site, and this is giving us a very strong, what we call a couplet here, and very strong rotation in southern Columbia County, New York. So this is not far to the west of Salisbury, and that's why I did want to give you that first alert that we've got this storm just to the west of us, and it is moving toward Connecticut. It looks like if this rotation were to last, it would continue to the east. Let me zoom out a little more so you can get a little better perspective here. It would continue off to the east and head toward Salisbury in northwestern Connecticut. So again, we've got the potential here for a very, very nasty storm that could be producing a tornado. And I'm going to switch this back over to sort of our typical radar mode here so you can see it. And I'll put it into motion. And so you can see the storm loop here. Watch that thunderstorm come to the east, and this thunderstorm is going to be making it into Salisbury shortly. So again, no tornado warning for Litchfield County yet, but I have a feeling we're going to have one coming soon. And even without a tornado, we're talking about the potential here for very, very large hail as this thunderstorm comes out of New York and moves towards portions of northwestern Connecticut. So this is a storm that we're obviously concerned about. And again, we're looking at the potential here for baseball-sized hail as the storm moves. It looks like it's just going to clip the border, but it looks like it's going to sink to the south. And I do think it's going to impact Salisbury, Canaan, North Canaan, and then eventually Norfolk. So if you're in far northwestern Connecticut, you need to be watching this storm very, very carefully. It looks like this is going to become an unusually dangerous situation for portions of far northwestern Connecticut as the storm moves to the east-southeast and is going to continue to move into portions of far northwestern Connecticut. So I'm going to widen out the perspective one more time and show you this line of thunderstorms we have. Again, this is off to the northwest of us. This is moving through New York State right now. We've got severe thunderstorm warnings in the Berkshires, and we've got a slew of tornado warnings to the west. And these tornado warnings are not far from us, especially when you consider the storm motion to the east right now at about 45 miles per hour. These storms will make it in pretty quickly, and I'm going to put a timer on this storm quickly for you if I can. There's the storm. Right now, that's where it's located. And again, these storms are moving to the east at approximately 45 miles per hour. So there is the time for this. It's going to be in Salisbury, 307, 309, North Canaan around 315, and then continue to the east from there. So we're going to be watching these storms very carefully as they move in. If you're in far northwestern Connecticut, you need to be ready to take your tornado precautions as soon as a warning is issued, and that would be a basement or a small interior room away from windows. We will keep you posted as the severe weather threat begins to ramp up across Connecticut. I'm meteorologist Ryan Hanrahan. As expected, we have a tornado warning now in effect for far northwestern Connecticut. We came on TV to show you this storm because we were concerned about it, and we certainly are concerned right now. We have a tornado warning now in effect for the far northwestern corner of Connecticut. This includes Salisbury and over into portions of North Canaan, and Norfolk. So let's zoom in and give you a closer look at where these storms are now. This pink shading you see here, this is the tornado warning. So Salisbury down towards Sharon, back into portions of Falls Village and Canaan and North Canaan. This is where the tornado warning is. We've got a severe thunderstorm warning and a tornado warning farther north, the worst hail, where we do have reports of baseball-sized hail. We were looking at radar and thought we had baseball-sized hail with this storm. We got a report from Columbia County, New York, that yes, indeed, baseball-sized hail was falling from this storm. So if you are in Salisbury, if you're in Sharon, if you're in portions of Cornwall, if you're in Canaan and North Canaan, and even Norfolk, what you need to do right now, you need to make sure you remain indoors. Stay away from windows. Don't look out the window waiting to see something. You're probably not going to see anything with all the trees around. And you're going to want to go to the basement, if at all possible, with this thunderstorm as it moves in, because this is the real deal, folks. This is a very powerful thunderstorm that's coming into portions of northwestern Connecticut. So let's time it out for you. Moving to the east at about 50 miles per hour. If there's a tornado, it would be just to the west of Salisbury, and on its current trajectory to a little south of due east. We're talking about Mount Riga at about 305, Salisbury at 311, Twin Lakes in Salisbury at 313, Canaan at 316, North Canaan at 317, and then moving to the east from there. So again, this tornado warning is in effect for northwestern Connecticut, parts of Berkshire County as well. And so this storm is sort of multifaceted, a couple different things to be worried about with this storm. The first and obvious threat is the tornado, where you have the potential for significant damage from the tornado as it were to move in. But we also are looking at some very large hail with this storm as well. Again, we had a report of baseball-sized hail from the storm in New York State. So in terms of what we're looking at to why is a tornado warning issued, so far we don't have any reports of a tornado on the ground as seen by someone, a storm spotter, but radar allows us to see exactly what's going on with this storm and how much the storm is spinning around and rotating, and we have a clear sign of rotation now moving along Route 82 in New York State. There it is. The red shows winds blowing away from the radar site or north to south. The green is winds blowing toward the radar site or south to north. So there is your rotation. Now, this is not far from Connecticut. This is the Connecticut border. There's Mount Frizzell right there in far northwestern Connecticut. This is the town of Salisbury. So this is the far northwestern corner of Connecticut, but this is a legit signature for a possible tornado. So the thunderstorm is spinning around, and at any moment, if not already, a tornado may form. Tornado may be on the ground. So this is a storm we need to watch extremely carefully as it moves out of New York and heads towards portions of northwestern Connecticut. So again, tornado warning with this thunderstorm here. From New York, the worst of the storm is still in New York State. There's that rotation. It's just to the west of Salisbury right now. But Salisbury down into Sharon, Cornwall, Canaan and North Canaan, you need to be ready for a tornado. You need to be inside. Make sure the kids don't go outside. Don't go outside and look for the tornado. With all the hills and the valleys and the trees, you can't see tornadoes in Connecticut like you can in the plains. You really can't see a tornado until it's on top of you. And so this is the signature we're watching that has us very concerned up through portions of northern Dutchess County, New York, and portions of Columbia County in New York. So there's the tornado warning. I'm just going to step out of the screen here shortly. The tornado warning goes until 3:30, and this tornado warned storm has the potential to produce baseball-sized hail. So we're talking about the potential for very large hail. Right now it looks like most of that hail is probably going to fall through portions of southern Berkshire County. So at least initially the hail core, which you see up here, let me draw the hail core on here for you. This area is where you've got some very large hail, potentially to the size of baseballs. That, at least right now, is to the north of Salisbury. So if you go up into Salisbury and you head up across the border, Great Barrington and Sheffield and Washington, in portions of Berkshire County, that's where the hail is. The tornado threat is just underneath this on the southern side of the storm. And so the question here is, well, what happens to the storm motion as the storm moves into Connecticut? And what we see with thunderstorms like this, they're called supercells. This is a right-moving supercell, so it's moving to the right of the winds. And there's a whole lot of science that goes into it, but basically what you need to know is these storms tend to take a little tug, a little push to the right than you'd expect to see. So I expect that this storm will sort of go just to the south of due east into Salisbury, and the hail core will sink south as well. So Norfolk, if I'm in Norfolk right now, just outside of the tornado warning, I'd be prepared for some big hail. If you've got a garage, you've got the car sitting outside in Norfolk, you still have about 15 minutes. Bring the car into the garage because, again, baseball-sized hail is possible with this storm just to the northwest of Salisbury, and this is going to slowly sink south. So if you remember the Massachusetts tornado in Springfield in 2011, it stayed north of the border the whole time. I think this storm sort of comes right into northwestern Connecticut. It looks like it's just going to slide underneath the border here. And again, there's that rotation signature. It's not, it doesn't look, maybe it weakened just a smidge here, just to the west of Salisbury. That's a pretty good looking signature. You've got strong winds blowing down Route 82. And then along Route 22 here, just to the west of Salisbury, you've got winds that are blowing from south to north. So that right there, that if you had a tornado, that's where it would be in portions of Columbia County, New York. And there's the border with Connecticut. So there's Salisbury, and that's the possible tornado moving to the east at 45 miles per hour. So we're going to zoom back out. I'm going to switch things over. And Josh, if you see anything, please jump in. I'm here with meteorologist Josh Stringanelli, and we're watching these storms. These are the storms that we're concerned about, this line of supercells that stretches from Albany back toward Binghamton, New York. And there's a lot of severe weather threats with these storms as they move in. But obviously the largest threat here is the potential for that tornado in portions of northwestern Connecticut. And there you can see there's the hail core just sort of skirting the border. And if there was a tornado, that's where it would be. Right on, almost you can see this is what we call a hook echo, where you have this area of rain and hail that's getting sucked on the back side of the storm. On the rear side of the storm. This is what we call the rear flank downdraft. And if there was a tornado, this is where it would be, just to the west of Salisbury. So if you're in Salisbury, what you need to do, you need to make sure you stay inside, you stay away from windows. And these storms, again, can be very, very dangerous. So move to a basement or small interior room, stay away from windows, don't go outside. And remember, tornadoes are very hard to see here in Connecticut. You really won't see a tornado until it's on top of you. So that's the tornado warning. It goes until 3 o'clock. We've got a couple threats here. One, obviously the tornado, but also the threat is there for some very, very large hail with this storm as it moves into northwestern Connecticut. So I'm going to zoom back in, and I'm going to switch things over to velocity mode one more time, and I'm just looking sort of at some of our behind-the-scenes products. I still see that very large hail threat, but the wind signature, at least the rotational signature, may be weakening just a bit. So let's put that back on there.
It appears that's right, Ryan. I mean, I'm just looking over the wind signature over here as well, and in the past few frames, probably in the last 5 to 6 minutes, it's definitely decreased a little bit, and that's certainly some good news.
Sure is. So this is Dutchess County, New York. This is Columbia County, New York, and there's Salisbury. Still, I mean, this does concern me. I mean, you've got, let's see, that wind is probably on the order of about 60 miles an hour. So there is still some turning here. Let me zoom out a little bit more so we can see Salisbury here. I'm going to put another storm tracker on this so we can watch this storm coming into Salisbury here. So let's do this one more time. Again, 45 miles per hour coming to the east. There's the possible tornado, and this is coming right into Salisbury. So Salisbury, 313 or so, Twin Lakes at 315, Canaan 319, North Canaan 320, and East
Ryan,
Canaan,
the velocity just spiked on that again. So
okay.
It went down for a bit. Now we're talking about those velocities. Pretty good couplet once again.
What do you have for en route there, Josh?
Looks like 1.1 right now.
Okay, so this is certainly enough to concern us with this rotation for the storm that is just to the west of us here in Connecticut. Not by much. It's maybe about a mile to the west of us here in Connecticut, and you can see obviously a concerning situation for the town of Salisbury right now. Now, far northwestern parts of Salisbury, not very populated. The city center, their town center, I should say, is right where 41 comes into 44. So that's the center of town. So we still have a little ways to go before we get this storm into the center of Salisbury, but not much. You've only got about maybe 3 or 4 minutes before we get this storm into the center of Salisbury. And not to mention the fact, I mean, Josh, it looks like that hail core is starting to sink south as well. And you know, this is some big hail. This is Dallas kind of hail that you've got coming down right along the border. So I mean, I know right along the border in Salisbury, there's not a whole lot, but that Canaan here, the village of Canaan in the town of North Canaan, you've got a pretty populated area coming up Route 7 up towards Sheffield. So this area is going to get hit very hard by that hail as it comes in. And this is the hail core that, as I mentioned, it's slowly drifting to the south as this whole system comes to the east. So one more shot.
And Ryan, this is the same system that produced baseball-sized hail. I mean, that's 2.75 inches in diameter.
Yeah.
That is some big hail here in Connecticut.
Yeah, I mean,
here in the Northeast.
That's big enough hail to total your car. So there's the rotation just to the west of Salisbury. So you've got the supercell thunderstorm spinning around, and this storm again just to the west of Salisbury, ready to move in across the border. It looks like, you know, I'm trying to quantify this. I mean, it does look like maybe it's a little broader here, but you still have to be ready at any time. These things can spin up and spin down very, very quickly. You've got to be ready in Salisbury and Canaan for a possible tornado as the storm moves in. And even if you don't get a tornado, you're talking about the potential for very strong winds. In fact, I'm looking at some winds here that are on the order of, let's say
60 knots, it appears.
Yeah, so we're talking about some winds that are over 60 miles an hour at the very least, along with that very large hail. So you've got sort of a bunch of different impacts here besides just the possible tornado. So again, hail core to the north. This is where you've got some very, very large hail. Those lightning flashes are cloud-to-ground lightning strikes. Lightning probably just as dangerous as any of the other threats here. So you need to make sure that you're inside. If the kids are on their way home from school, you may want to give them a call and say, you know, if you're walking, you know, find a friend and jump in your friend's house or something, because you don't want to be outside when this kind of storm moves in. So a really nasty storm coming through North Canaan and down towards Salisbury. So let's go back. Let me throw the velocity on here one more time. We're getting live velocity updates. And Josh, look at those inbounds starting to ramp up.
Yep, they certainly are.
So it might, you know, maybe it may not be producing a tornado this very minute, but it certainly may in the next 30 seconds or so. So you've got this rotation. So the storm is spinning around here. And when you have that spin, sometimes all it takes is going over a hill and into a valley to tighten up that spin and give you a tornado. So the tornado warning is issued when there is a tornado that is imminent, and that's what we have again, Salisbury, Canaan, and down toward Falls Village. You've got to be on the lookout for this storm as it moves in. So I'm going to zoom in a little closer. We've got this storm that's basically, if there was a tornado, it's right on the New York-Connecticut line. So we can start to take a look at some of these streets and give you more street-level mapping. We're going to zoom into your neighborhood here, and there's not much in Salisbury. I believe this is Mount Washington Road. Let me zoom in a little closer, see if I can get it here. But this is up in some of the hills if you've been hiking up there. Yeah, there you go. Mount Washington Road. I've driven up there many times. It's a dirt road. It's beautiful. You can get to some of the great hiking spots up there. This is 41, so this is under Mountain Road over to the east, but this is Mount Washington Road, and if you're in this area, I know there are some houses up here. If there was a tornado, this is where it would be coming in from New York State. And you need to make sure that you are in a safe place. You know, don't go outside. Don't wait to see the tornado, especially if you start to hear the wind pick up. Think to yourself like, hey, yeah, this could be a tornado. And this is a classic-looking hook echo with this hail core. Then this hail core looks like, to me, Josh, right over Connecticut right now, moving towards Salisbury and Canaan.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you can see a clear defined hook echo with that system there. And a lot of times when these storms come through and you see these tornadoes, they go through what we call a cycling phase. So the velocity really ramps up for a second, and the velocity is basically the circulation within the winds. And that's what produces the tornado. And, you know, sometimes it goes down and then it comes right back up. And that's what we're seeing take place right now. We're seeing some pretty impressive winds with this. in excess of 60 miles per hour away from the radar and then 60 miles per hour towards the radar. And Ryan, we just got a brand new radar image, and the velocity on that is quite incredible. I mean, very, very impressive, tight velocity couplet now moving into Salisbury. All right, let's track that.
Yeah, let's do that here. So let's zoom in a little closer, and yeah, there you go. Nice call, Josh. That's your couplet. If there was a tornado, this is where it would be. So what I'm going to do is put the arrows back on here so you can sort of understand what the radar's showing you. So Doppler radar, what's great about live first alert Doppler radar is it allows us to look at the wind direction and the wind speed. And so when you see a rotational signature on Doppler radar, you think to yourself, hey, you could have a tornado, especially on a day like today where everything is telling you, the atmosphere says, hey, it's primed for a tornado here, and that's why you've got that tornado warning. And this is in Salisbury right now. This is moving over Mount Washington Road in Salisbury, just to the south of the border. It looks like it's going to go just north of the center of Salisbury, but just barely. If you're in Salisbury and if you're in Canaan, you need to make sure you're in a safe spot as the storm moves in. Safest place to be is in a basement as the storm approaches.
That has an NROD of 1.35.
1.35. Okay, so what Josh is saying by NROD, it's an acronym for normalized rotation. And what it does, it gives us a way to sort of tell just how strong that rotation is. So the higher the number, the more the storm is spinning around. So Route 41 in Salisbury, Taconic Road in Salisbury, you're next. This thing is going to be over you in moments, if not seconds. Scoville Ore Mine Road, Logan Road, Mount Riga Road, Mount Washington Road, looks like Bunker Hill Road down to the south. That's where this tornado, if there was one, and we're looking at a radar signature that tells us there is the potential for a tornado here, that's where it would be. Let's track it for you one more time. I'm going to zoom back out here and give you a storm track so you can plan on when this storm is going to be in your town, because eventually it's going to move to the east. It's going to get past this tornado warning eventually. And so the worst of the weather here, again, a possible tornado in Salisbury moving to the east. This is going to be in Norfolk in about 15 minutes or so. So we're talking about Salisbury Center right about now, Twin Lakes at 318. Canaan at 322, North Canaan at 323. Now, North Canaan is the village of Canaan there. East Canaan, out by some of the dairy farms on Route 44, we're talking about 324, and then it's going to head up the mountain into Norfolk, and that's where this possible tornado is. Again, moving out of Salisbury, or moving into Salisbury, I should say, and it looks very impressive on radar here. This is a clear-as-day couplet. This is some strong rotation. Josh, that looks even bigger now.
It has strength, and NROT's up to 1.6.
It sure has.
So, I mean, and that's an indication that this storm's just getting stronger. The winds are getting stronger with this, and the chances for a tornado coming down from the upper levels to the surface is greatly increasing right now. So, you know, again, if you are in the area, if you're in northern Litchfield County right now, seek shelter immediately. You know, stay away from any windows, and you know, this is a look at it right here, and I can kind of time it out once again. You can see it kind of coming through Route 41, and we'll switch on over to velocity mode. I want to show you what we're looking at here. Well, you see these greens and reds? This basically tells us what's the wind direction, and anytime you get these green and red colors together, it's a pretty good indication that we have a lot of circulation in the atmosphere, and that's exactly what's happening right here. So we have these red colors going away from the radar. The radar is located up in Albany, New York, and you have these green colors going towards the radar. And anytime you get those together, that's where we're concerned for a tornado. So that's coming right across Route 41, and we'll take a closer look here and give you some kind of street level mapping. If you're on Logan Road, Scoville Ore Mine Road, Mount Riga Road, Bunker Hill Road, these are all areas that are you know, under the gun for this possible tornado. And Ryan, I was just looking over the latest wind stuff, and it does look like it has decreased just for a second here, the amount of rotation. So
and when we saw that just a bit before, we saw that the rotation weakened, and then it spun right back up. So again, this is the storm into Salisbury right now. If you're in Salisbury, you need to be in a safe spot. You need to be away from windows. A basement would be preferable. And if there was a possible tornado, that's where it would be in the far northwestern corner, right along Route 41. So for the rest of the state, we've got a severe thunderstorm warning issued ahead of the storm into to Hartford County. So that severe thunderstorm warning includes Hartford up toward Enfield. But again, it's really far northwestern Connecticut that we're concerned with at the moment. So we've got a couple issues here. Let me switch this over to a regular, what we call reflectivity, and that's showing you rain, hail, and whatnot in the storm. And let me zoom in a little bit closer, and I want to yep, what do you got, Josh?
North Canaan, not super impressive, but nickel-sized hail there in North Canaan.
Okay, yep, that looks reasonable. Right, Canaan, right there, North Canaan on 44, you're in the hail core. So if there's a tornado threat, it's here, south of the hail. The hail is where you've, the hail core to the north on the forward flank of the storm along 44. And we can take a closer look at that, Josh. We've got that nickel-sized hail report. So earlier the storm was producing baseballs, but now it looks like the storm, the hail may be a little bit less, and not a huge surprise there. That we're talking about hail to the size of nickels based on what we're looking at now. But you're talking about in Canaan and soon to be in Norfolk, you've got some very, very heavy rain and also a whole lot of hail. And this hail is going to be pretty big. Nickel, quarter, golf ball sized hail. Certainly can't rule it out. We'll zoom into Canaan here. You can see right along 44. That's where the hail is coming down at a very, very good clip. You've got some big hail for sure in the area around Canaan, and that is moving into Norfolk. So it's that northern edge that has the hail potential. The southern edge has the tornado potential. And so far, the storms have really been up through far northwestern Connecticut, but they will approach the remainder of the state. So they're not going to stay up in northwestern Connecticut all day. They will begin to move to the south, and we're going to see this thunderstorm complex move east and southeast. And so eventually Waterbury and Hartford, you're going to get in on the action. So hail now heading toward Norfolk. The hail is going to begin to pick up here in Norfolk and Colebrook and eventually out toward Heartland. The hail is coming down at a very good clip over North Canaan. And then in Salisbury, that's where you have the potential for a tornado. We had a brief where things picked up quite a bit, and it looks like they may be, the tornado threat, at least right now, may have diminished just a bit. But still, I'm still looking at some broad rotation here right over the center of Salisbury. So what I'm looking at here is winds that are blowing from northwest to southeast, and then back off to the east, we've got winds blowing in the opposite direction. So there's your rotation here in the town of Salisbury. These storms are moving to the east-southeast at about 45 miles per hour. So I think it's a good time to take another storm track and track this storm a bit farther to the east. If you're in Salisbury, again, the worst of the weather moving in your town right now. Canaan is getting a lot of hail as well, and so is Norfolk. The hail is going to begin to come down at a good clip in Norfolk and Colebrook shortly. And to time this storm out again, let's switch back one more. There we go. Storm again moving to the east at approximately 45 miles per hour. So we'll time out the worst of this storm. We're going to time it right into the Farmington Valley for you. We're talking about Norfolk at 320, Winchester and Winstead around 337, also including up toward Highland Lake. Riverton at 341, New Hartford at 344, Barkhamsted at 347, North Canton at 349, and West Simsbury at 351. So again, you're talking about a couple threats here. You've got hail, and you've got also the potential for some very heavy rain, potential for flooding as well, and that tornado threat right on the southern corner of this storm where we have what we call a hook echo. Pretty classic looking signature here, maybe not quite as impressive as it was a couple frames ago. One thing I will note though is occasionally when these storms come down off the hills into the valleys, and this one's about to head into the Housatonic River Valley right around Falls Village and just north of Falls Village up toward Canaan, these things can tighten up quickly. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw from Salisbury over toward Canaan developing the thing tighten up just a little bit as it moved down from the hills into the valley there. So that's one thing we're going to be watching as the storm moves to the east. Josh, do we have any more storm reports?
Well, Ryan, I'm watching the system right behind it in Pine Plains. I mean, it's probably 15 to 20 minutes away from the border, and that has a impressive, very impressive hail signature. I mean, Doppler radar is indicating it's between about 2.5 to 3 inches, and that system right here, let me point it out, is approximately 15 to 20 minutes away from the Connecticut border. We'll actually time it out for you. And this isn't tornado warned. This system right here, the one over Connecticut is, the one over Salisbury right now. However, this system just to the west is producing some very impressive hail, some very damaging hail. And one other thing to note is that we're dealing with some prolific lightning from these systems as well. I mean, this is putting out quite the lightning show. And we expect this system to be into Connecticut by about 3:30. So, it's 3:20 right now, so in about 10 minutes, you might see a little bit of a lull in the action. But just behind it, we're talking about some very, very strong winds, some very big hail, in excess of 2 inches, which can do some big damage.
Sure can.
But hey,
and Josh, one thing I just noted for the storm over us, it looks like the storm split.
It did.
So it looks like you've got one storm that's going to move up to the north, up into the Berkshires, and the storm is probably going to literally break in half. And that, I just looked up about 10,000 feet off the ground, and you can see that storm split underway.
And that's good news. I mean, that's likely meaning that this storm will probably, hopefully diminish a little bit.
I think it diminishes
the wind signature.
Diminishes in the short term, but 20 minutes from now, that southern storm, it could strengthen again. And we've got, in Salisbury just got hit by storm number 1, and as you mentioned, we've got that second storm coming in behind it.
Yeah, so I mean, if you just had that storm move through, still seek shelter because another very strong storm is just behind it, 15 to 20 minutes away. And I think one thing to note here is that the tornado warning that's in effect, there haven't been any official reports that a tornado is actually on the ground. This is Doppler radar indicated tornadoes. So basically what we're looking at here is the National Weather Service is looking at the radar just like we are, and it looks like there's enough wind circulation and the radar data looks enough that there could be a tornado within this storm. So, hey, let's track this storm once again. It's moving about due east at approximately 45 miles per hour. And we'll track this storm heading east. It's headed towards Norfolk and Colebrook. We expect it in about 3:38, so 15 minutes from now in North Colebrook, and 3:39 kind of in the center of Colebrook. And Ryan, do you have any other information?
Yeah, I mean, we just saw some pictures coming in on Twitter of some tennis ball-sized hail falling out in New York. So, yeah, this storm system, the one behind it, you've got the tornado threat here, which appears, I'd still be sure you're in a safe spot. The tornado threat may be diminishing on this leading storm. We'll zoom in a little bit. Well, you know what? Actually, maybe on the leading edge, it looks like it may be starting to tighten back up in East Canaan. Yeah, that's something. This is Canaan, so this is 44, and this is Route 7. So down here is Falls Village. This is 44, so heading past some of the farms here, Canaan Valley Road, and then out to the east. It looks like you may have a another area of rotation. This is probably on that big mountain just to the south of 44. So to the south of the farms on 44 in Canaan. This is what we're going to have to watch. So we've got...
And that's kind of a new area of circulation that's developing,
yeah,
it looks like.
Yeah, it sure is. So this is what we're going to have to watch as it comes to the east. Into Norfolk. Just got a report from John Barbagallo, the public information officer in Norfolk, and he said that they've got frequent cloud-to-ground lightning. It's a pretty nasty storm, but so far no issues with wind or hail yet, but I think that changes. So when you see these storms split and sort of come into two, what you wind up, initially you get the storms to sort of weaken just a bit, so the tornado threat may go down, and then the tornado threat's going to ramp back up as the storms sort of, once they separate, then you get different storms that become dominant, and you can get things to really take off. So we've got that hail threat developing again to the west, heading back into Salisbury, and then this is the storm along 44. Norfolk's getting some hail right now. It looks like, especially in the center of town, we'll give you a closer look here. Looks like along 272 and along 44 in Norfolk, you do have a hail threat that has certainly developed, and we'll head back toward velocity mode and look for some more rotation.
And Ryan, I just want to point out, Region 1 school district, the elementary school, the buses are on hold right now until the warning is listed.
Okay.
Until the warning is lifted.
So that certainly makes sense. That's a great move in the town of Salisbury in Region 1. So Region 1 takes up a large area. You've got Housatonic Valley High School down into Sharon and Kent, all part of Region 1 school district. And I believe Canaan and North Canaan in Region 1 as well. But in Salisbury, they're holding the buses, which I think makes perfect sense given the situation where not only do you have that tornado threat, which is diminishing as the storm's about to move out of where that tornado warning is, and the tornado warning will expire at 3:26. So it's 3:26 now. Will expire in 4 minutes as the storm moves to the east of where we have that warning in effect. But still, just to the east, you've got some big hail. This is certainly the problem from Norfolk out toward Colebrook. You're talking about hail likely to the size of golf balls, and then the second storm off to the west, that's going to move back into Salisbury and create more issues. So,
Ryan, I would say that one from a hail aspect looks even more impressive than the one that's in Connecticut right now.
Yeah, sure does.
Some impressive reflectivity.
So let's track. Well, let me track first. I'm just going to look here. Let me track the hail core on this storm. So the hail core here over Colebrook and heading toward Heartland. So don't be surprised to see some hail, a lot of lightning, some very heavy rain moving through the northern Farmington Valley, and then eventually getting toward Pequannock at 3:54. Pequannock's in Windsor there. Certainly no stranger to tornadoes. They had the big one back in 1979 on October 3rd. But this is the area that it looks like the rotation and the tornado threat diminished now. But the hail threat and the heavy rain threat remains quite large heading out. I just don't have any reports of a tornado in Salisbury, which is good news. And nothing I saw on radar. We tightened things up briefly there. Probably wasn't enough to drop a tornado in Salisbury, which is good news. Josh, what do you got?
And just another hail report from North Canaan, quarter-sized hail. So that's to that severe criteria. Quarter-sized hail in North Canaan.
Sure is. Let me track this next hail core that's about to move into Salisbury. So I don't see any rotation on this storm. It looks like a convergent signature on radar. So the winds are coming together, and that forces the air to lift. And so that can give you some really nasty weather, but not a tornado. So we're talking about Salisbury getting into the action again. 3:31 in Salisbury. You've got this next round of heavy rain and hail to move in. And then North Canaan gets hit again. Eventually Norfolk as well in about 15 to 20 minutes in Colebrook. So you've got this line of thunderstorms here that we're tracking, sort of these two scattered storms that are sort of congealing into a line. And we're going to have to see what happens as the storms move to the east. But you've got that tornado warning that looks like it's going to expire shortly. But I also, we actually have some video from North Canaan, if we can show that here. We have, there you can see, that's from Brian Oler, who's the state rep up there in Canaan. You can see some pretty good hail coming down. It looks like nickel size.
Yep.
Yeah, that certainly is enough to get your attention as that storm moved in. And that was to the north of where you had that possible tornado. But Josh, I'm looking at the storm that we've got moving through Norfolk, and notice that the hail core looks like it's shooting back up. So we have the storm split, and now it looks like this storm's going to start to strengthen again.
And Ryan, one other thing to note, not to get off of that storm, but the storm just to the west has reports of 2-inch size hail.
So is that, I believe that's egg size. 2-inch diameter is an egg. We think of everything in terms of, well, what's the diameter of an egg? And I believe that's 2 inches in diameter. So this is the storm here in Norfolk that looks like it's picking back up, getting probably close to baseball-sized hail. The tornado threat, the tornado warning is going to expire in a minute, which is good news. I don't see any indication that the warning would be continued, but I do think that this storm is going to start to strengthen again as it moves through Norfolk and heads into Colebrook and Winchester. So you're talking about quarter-sized hail now. The potential is there in the next 5 minutes to get up to maybe golf ball-sized hail, and this is what's going to move toward the Granbys eventually. So we have meteorologist Caitlin McGrath. She's chasing the storm. She's on her way up Route 8 right now, so she'll probably miss storm number 1, but get storm number 2 coming in from the west, and then we're going to see another storm. Then we've got Tara Joyce, who